Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Generally Irritable. I just realized that I don't have my hard wiring plugged into the internet. So, you guys, if you're watching and you're in the chat, let me know if there's any latency or like skipping or bad visual or audio or anything like that, and I'll plug my computer in. I just realized it as we were going live, and I got up from my chair, and then I was like, I can't start, and I'm not here. Okay. You guys, I get super awkward at the beginning of the show. Benjamin said I have to like talk and not really get the show started for the first few minutes while people have the opportunity to come online, but I feel like that's annoying and stupid. So... but my husband is wise. Maybe we should have a countdown timer. Tell me what you think about countdown timers. Go ahead and put it in the comments because, we're trying to learn and grow. As you guys all know, the algorithm hates everyone. They don't want you to succeed. The man does not want you to succeed. So, give us some feedback, leave some comments. It helps make this channel and these videos get seen by more eyes. And, today's episode is one that you probably want to share. You're going to want to share. You're going to want to share it around. This is a little bit different than our usual political episode where we bring somebody on and we talk about the state of politics or education or, whatever it is, some expert in their field. And then we lament how things are and how we would like them to be. But today the show is going to be super fun. I've got my friend Dr. Dan French on the show today. We decided as we were talking, getting warmed up, that he needed his own theme song. So, if Dr. Dan's fans and friends are in the audience today, let us know what you think. Give us a song. So, should it be like a 3-6 Mafia track? Should it be like Bob Marley? Like, what would be a good vibe, do you think, for Dr. Dan? Put it in the comments below, and we're going to make him his own custom track. And I actually am dead serious because Dan French is an old friend. He's a doctor of rhetoric. He is an excellent marketer as well. So in all of the conversations that we're having today, I want you guys to remember that he's somebody that you can hire to help with your branding and marketing. Evidence of what a good job he does. He named 3 of our businesses. And to this day, we still get tons of laughs. Generally Irritable was a Dan French. He was like, you're generally irritable when you talk about politics. So let people know what they're going to get. And then my accounting practice, I Love Your Money. I wanted to bring my personality, my jokesterness to the business because, I'm not your typical accountant. That's many of you guys who have been following me for a while know that that's what my vocation is. And then Benjamin, he is a fight choreographer and stuntman, and his nickname is the Violence Conductor. So, we owe a lot to Mr. Dan French, and I would love to make him his own custom theme song by one of our producers. But without further ado, Mr. Dan French, how are you this fine afternoon?
I also named you Erica. Tell him, I went back in time and whispered in your mom's ear, call her Erica.
Did you also tell her to spell my name weird so that I would be annoyed for the rest of my life by people spelling my name wrong?
Yeah, you gotta give kids a little bit of rough stuff to deal with, and that's an easy one. Linguistically challenged people.
I feel like that is the thing. Dan is a jokester, you guys. So this is I'm talking him up as a rhetorician.
Rhetorician, that's correct.
Rhetorician. As a rhetorician and a marketing person, but Dan, you also have been doing stand up and writing comedy in California and Hollywood for many years now.
Yeah, I kind of run both sides of the railroad track. I do comedy, so I do stand up. I write for late night. I'm a joke writer guy, like hardcore joke writer guy. And last year I was on boats for 175 days doing a cruise ship comedy.
Okay,
Super
hold on. I
interesting.
need to write that down so that I remember to ask you about that later. Please continue.
Yeah, it's kind of a fascinating thing. And so I do like I have a Facebook group called Joke Writers Utopia if you're interested in jokes. I mean, just hardcore jokes. I have a lot of pro comedy writers on there, and we get together and write jokes and talk about joking. And then I used to be a professor. I have a PhD in rhetoric, which is the old Greek word for persuasion. If you have a rhetoric degree, you start with the Greeks studying persuasion, and you go all the way till the current minute. And it's usually used in politics. So there's a lot of rhetoricians and rhetorical scholars and speechwriters who will study rhetoric. And my thing is I have a podcast. It's going to be rebranded Rhetoric Training for America. Everybody's trying to do politics in this very complicated world, and nobody's really got training in it and how to do it.
Oh my God. And everything is political now, Dan. We were talking about it a little bit before we started. You know, movies are political. All our entertainment, sports are all political now. Freaking clothing is political. What store you shop at, what beer you drink. You know, I mean, it's out of control right now.
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of like the Greeks. The Greeks had a certain number of people who could get up and talk in the forum, and of course that Romans always get a pantheon. And so a lot of people were suddenly allowed to vote, and everybody could get up and speak. And so it just got weird, and they had to figure out, like, how do we do this in a organized way? And then when social media and cable media came up, suddenly everybody could get into the conversation. Whereas before you'd be standing on a street corner handing out a flyer about your political views. Now you can actually get on and do podcasts. And so it's broken everything open again, and nobody knows what to do with it.
And then you can endlessly comment or respond to comments. And it's like, you know, one of the things that I always ask myself when deciding to respond to somebody is, you know, will what I'm about to say add to the conversation? Will it, you know, enhance it in some way? Will I add some new insight? And if I'm not going to, then I probably don't really need to say anything, unless it's like add a boy or add a girl kind of a thing. I don't think most people got that same kind of training or like lesson in their life. I feel like everybody wants to be heard all the time.
That does seem about. There's lots of reasons for why there used to be a lot of gatekeepers who would decide whether what you have to say or whether you as an entity are worthy of getting into the public space. Like, there's no way, like even with Trump, he would never have gotten elected back when there was 3 networks and Walter Cronkite. They wouldn't have let him on TV.
That's an interesting thought, because not only would they not have let him on TV, interesting thought, but also one of the things people have said is that it was all the free media he got. It wasn't just his regular appearances. It was just basically all these places covering everything he said incessantly.
Yeah, because they're hungry for any story to fill up their constantly emptying space. Mm-hmm. And Trump is great at filling up space. He will come up with stuff every day that the media will be like, oh, we could cover that.
That's true. Well, and that's either good or bad, right? So when you have gatekeepers, like you said, they can either destroy a person or they can make a person, right? Because we've seen them try to make a person a thing. right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at how great this person is. Or, no, they're the worst person in the whole world.
Yeah, gatekeeping isn't good or bad by its nature. It's just a technique. It's a thing that happens in
Mm,
public discourse. There are
yeah.
gatekeepers. Like and when like Twitter came up and played gatekeeper and kicked Trump off Twitter and everybody lost their minds. It's like that's just a traditional gatekeeper's prerogative of to decide who they want on and who they don't. Like
Mm,
it's a private entity and all that stuff. But when you look at it and you're like, well, is that the proper function of a gatekeeper? Should they really be making these distinctions? Do we trust them to decide who gets to talk and who doesn't? It gets very complicated.
that right. Well, and that's you and I both received community guideline strikes on our YouTube channels. Did you say you got banned?
I got banned. I got kicked off about 30 episodes into
That's
my podcast, which literally trains people how to do ethical rhetoric. Like it
which is
literally teaches people to fight against propaganda, and they banned me.
that is I mean, if that isn't something right there, like, no, you can't teach people how to fight propaganda. Why? They don't want you to do that because they want to keep propagandizing people. Oh, good golly. So hold on. Backing up a little bit, I remember you telling me one time, that as part of the art of persuasion, you really it's really not normally like I'm going to persuade a large group of people. Normally it's really about one-on-one interactions and being like present and actually what's the right I'm trying to remember the word that you use, but like acknowledging the person and how they feel or what they believe. Like you can't start out by saying you're stupid and then think you're going to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, it's again one of my foundational things is nobody really gets trained ever how to persuade. It's something we
Mm.
pick up in our families, from a little bit from school, a little bit from watching the media. Everybody kind of just de facto does certain ways of persuasion, but you never get trained to it. And like even if you disagree with somebody horribly and they enrage you and you confront them, like that's a horrible place to start persuasion from.
Mm.
I don't care who
Yeah.
you are, whether you're right, left, middle, whatever. You don't want to start with somebody in your face. That's not going to be very effective as a persuasive technique.
Yeah.
And so getting
No.
trained to it, like what you just said earlier, I think is exactly right. You need to monitor your own way of how you interact. Do you interact because of some emotional trigger reaction and you're like, is that good for the conversation? Maybe if it makes you feel good, I don't know, but that's not really the point. Ultimately, the point, like that, I was this word I always forget. I've actually trained myself to remember it now. Like argument has basically two areas. There's heuristic argument, which is basically aggravated argument. You're arguing to defeat the other person. And then there's
Oh.
amiable argument or propositional argument, which is you're arguing to find the truth. So both of you are
Mm.
just trying to talk to each other so you can find the truth.
Like a like a common ground or like a understanding.
Well, it's the argument is a way of dialectic, and the Greeks called it dialectic, of moving through something, testing each proposition so that you get to a true outcome. And that's the real
Mm.
purpose of an argument. It's like, hey, you may believe this, I may believe this. One of us is wrong.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
we really shouldn't leave human beings in a wrong space. That's not a good thing.
Mm.
So you
Is
argue to
it?
try to find the right answer for both of you.
I mean, isn't it possible for two people to both be right? I
Slightly
mean,
right,
if
partially
you,
right.
I'm, because I'm thinking like, I mean, people often just have fundamentally different worldviews. And so there's going to be some things that will not, I mean, that are unfortunately I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Like these days, truth is not truth. Truth is whatever I think truth is. And so, so much of in my opinion, the problem that we have now is the rejection of objective truth. And so I'm curious, when you say like arriving at something true and you don't want to leave someone in a false state, like tell me more what you mean by that.
Yeah,
Given objective truth, what I just said.
this is why rhetoric sits very, very closely alongside philosophy.
Okay.
Because you have to define all these terms. The original, the beginning thing that you're taught in rhetoric, the beginning technique in rhetoric is definition. Like whoever gets to define the terms, like what is truth, typically wins an argument if you're doing heuristic arguments. So all these terms need to be defined before we can really communicate about them. Okay. And in logic, if you've ever taken a course in logic, which I think would be really useful for everybody to get trained in logic, like hardcore logic, like hardcore logic gets rid of words because words are bad technology.
What? Well, how do you communicate then?
Numbers.
Okay.
Numbers are very solid. Like a number like x plus y equals z, if you say that, that's propositional logic, that's set. Okay. There's no reason to argue it anymore.
Got it.
But words are constantly changing meanings on you.
That is true. Slippery. That is true. And it's very annoying.
It is. You gotta try to hold them down a little bit so that you can get to something like truth.
Okay.
See, it all gets very complicated very quickly.
I'm like, well, this is the thing, because that's one of the things. I actually have a 1942 dictionary on purpose. I got it was a gift from a good friend. I wanted an old dictionary specifically to read this one book because I wanted to know what the words meant back when the book was written.
Sure.
And because that stuff changes over time. And to me, that's one of the most infuriating things about our culture right now is this incessant push to change what words mean. And then we can never have a sincere conversation because everybody's decided that word means something different. They've got some personal connotation that makes them feel sad on the inside, but like no one else thinks that but you. And now we all in the whole world have to accommodate you.
Yes, but it's like you said, it's complicated and it's frustrating. Okay. Like the pronoun argument, which is a trigger. It's a trigger area for a lot of people. And my daughter's a millennial, so she's super left. And she gets triggered by it as badly as anybody ever got triggered on the right. Like if you don't do the pronouns exactly right, she loses her mind because she's a big ally of the trans community and has done makeup for drag shows and things like that. She's an artist, and she just volunteered and helped with that stuff. But it's so, the rules for people defining how they want to be identified, how they want to be addressed. That's not the way language is supposed to work. It's supposed to be a consensual, gradual agreement to a general set of rules that everybody follows. When you try to make abrupt changes and the source is defining and constantly redefining how they want to be talked to, you can't hit those. That doesn't work linguistically.
Correct. And then every single day it might be different. And then I'm supposed to be able to keep up with it. And you don't look anything like what you want to be called, but I'm supposed to know that before I say a word to you. And then I have to change my whole way of being and interacting with other human beings in the world because I might offend you.
Right. So I wrote a joke about it yesterday about in the future, like Batman is going to be Bat They.
Oh my God, shut up.
I'm Bat They. I'm Bat Them.
Oh my God, but it's so true.
Because all the superheroes have pronouns. All the superheroes have pronouns built into their names.
Is it Wonder They? We can't say Wonder Woman anymore?
Wonder Sis Woman.
Oh my God. You're so dumb. That is, oh my God, it probably is going to be like that. Especially the way things are going with Disney. And they own half of the IPs and they're doing all this crazy stuff. So this is so as a persuasion coach, when you were talking about how like sudden changes, right? Like we can all, if over time language shifts, cultural norms shift and whatever, but when anytime you try to like jam it down people's throats, there's an automatic rejection of it, right? Like
Sure.
even if
Yeah.
it's Dan, even if it's something I agree with,
Exactly.
if you try to force me, I'll be like, no.
Yes.
No.
Americans do not like forced change. I don't care what it is. Like I grew up in Louisville and I was in school, in grade school during busing when they decided that, hey, we've got all these inequities between the quality of schools and inequities across the town because Louisville is very segregated into poor white, rich white, and black section. And their solution in a lot of cities, they tried this, was to let's just bus kids to different places, which there's, I guess, a logic. It's a clumsy logic, but it's a logic. But people lost their minds. You're going to take my kid, put him on a bus and drive him across town. That's a forced solution. And that's bad. It's a bad idea with Americans. Really bad.
Yep.
You need to do persuasive solutions. And then you're safer, because that's what America is based on, is persuasion. Like that's all we do in our politics, really. It's supposed to be based on the president persuades, the Congress persuades, everybody involved persuades, and then we vote.
And so what do you think has, and I'm asking you to speculate here, what do you think has changed in our culture? Because I would think, so I want you to dig into your comedy roots. Now, you and I, we're different politically, right? So you're I'm pretty conservative, you're pretty liberal.
I'm not liberal. I'm the Comedian Americans Party. I just vote for the funniest people. If you want to join the Comedians American Party,
you know what, Dan, I think this is the best year ever for a third party candidate to win, and I personally am praying for it, but that is another conversation. And maybe it's not fair for me to call you liberal, but you are less conservative than I am.
Conservative, way more. I grew up Catholic. I reject any kind of rigidity, any kind of old schoolness. I'm a comedian. I want a wild, open society. Yes.
Okay, so that's the thing that you and I would definitely agree on. We want free speech. We want comedy to still be funny. We want and we want people to be happy and healthy and live a good life. Like I feel like you're kind of like an old school liberal.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Everybody happy, living a good life. Let's go.
Do your thing. Just leave me alone. Okay. I don't care if you're doing some weirdo, pagan, whatever you want to do. Just don't make me do it. Just don't make me be cool with it. You don't have to come to church with me, and I don't have to do your pagan thing. Like, it's cool. Like, let's just leave each other alone. That's kind of the way that I think about it. But you've been in comedy for decades now. And so you've really, I feel like comedy is taking the biggest hit. Or I don't know, are you guys the canary in the coal mine, or are comedians getting canceled like the final nail in the coffin of what actually is liberalism, right? Like our founding documents in the Constitution were to create a liberal society where people get to go live and be whatever. And it doesn't feel like that's the case anymore. More and more, it feels like no one's allowed to say anything. So as a comedian watching it change, like, I want to hear your opinion on all that stuff.
Oh, it's not changed. Lenny Bruce in the 50s and 60s was put in jail for saying words. Like, it's always been a horribly repressive environment for comedians. Like
No
that's why like I
way.
joke around about the Comedian Americans Party, but it's something I actually kind of like because comedians are oppressed as a group. Like we may be the most oppressed group there is. Like you can get fired, you can get arrested for just everyday life saying your funny thoughts.
Wow.
Like they're constantly having to repress themselves because you can't, the culture can't handle even irreverent comedy or comedy that doesn't fit in the moment or hey, we're trying to do something serious here. It's not even the outrageous, pushing on sore spots comedy.
Yeah.
Uh, Normal culture cannot handle comedy very well. It doesn't
Well,
like
and
it.
I just looked it up. So Lenny Bruce was arrested for obscenity.
Yeah,
That's what. So I mean, impure, blah blah blah.
just
What
using
was the
obscenity.
joke? What did he
The guy was
say?
like he had a bunch of political comedy and a bunch of social issue comedy, and a really smart guy. But what they got him for was the same thing, like what they did with the Doors and rock and roll and things like that. Like it went too far. They were like, oh no, we don't want profanity or obscenity or nudity or things like that in our public discourse. So there's always a line.
Isn't
The
that
line the line is
interesting?
shifted now though. Like it used to be just like the standard authorities had power, right? So the police
Yeah.
and government and rich people and things like that who could say, hey, I want that person taken out of the game. But now all these splinter groups have some power. So they can go after and take
Mm,
people out of the game too. So now
yes.
it's not that everybody's being canceled. They've always been canceled. Just now they've got more enemies. There's more
Isn't that
people out there who've got
fascinating?
power.
And that's part of the social media thing too, right? That basically, like, because now people who are of like mind or like character or whatever can get together and organize an attack on someone,
Yeah.
for
And it
lack of a
doesn't take
better word.
much, right? Like if you know how to
Wow.
villainize someone, and that's again going back to rhetoric. Rhetoric studies the messaging techniques and the strategies of how you do these things. So it's like, hey,
Okay.
if you randomly picked a comedian, like I want to take that person out, it would not be hard to do. Like they've done
Yeah.
it multiple times with like a comedian who people kind of know, but wants suddenly move into the bigger media and like host an award show. Like Kevin Hart was going to
Mm.
host an award show. Well, then they went
Yes.
back to everything he's ever said in all of history,
Yes.
and they're like, these 5 jokes here are kind of iffy, man. It's like the guy has
Yep.
said hundreds of thousands of things, and you
And
found five
for
iffy jokes.
years, well, and that's the thing is, where were you guys when I mean, for the last however many years he's been a comedian? You weren't hating on him then. You weren't trying to
Right.
get him canceled then.
But it's just
So
an
like,
opportunity. It's a rhetorical opportunity because he's trying to move up. He's
mm,
going to go into the bigger pulpit. So now everybody's like, oh, well, here's how you slander somebody. Here's how you bring somebody's character into question. Here's how you accuse somebody. And it becomes a rhetorical game to me. Like, this is what I study. And
yeah,
the problem a lot of times for comedians is that they're not prepared to defend themselves in these situations. These
yeah,
situations are too complicated for them. They want to do comedy. Like Louis C.K., when he got canceled,
yes,
released his own statement. And I kind of I know a guy who's good friends with him. And I told him, I said, before Louis talks, have him call me because this is
yeah.
what rhetoric does. Like it teaches you how to apologize in public so that you're forgiven. Comedians don't know how to do that. He made it worse.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody that has apologized in public has made it better. It's almost like if you apologize, it's like acknowledging that whatever they say is correct. Now, Louis C.K., I mean, when you're talking about essay stuff, and I'm saying essay because I'm learning that there are certain things that you can't say, or the algorithm will make it so your video doesn't get promoted. But when we're talking about like somebody actually harming somebody, okay, fine. But what he did, I'm sorry. My understanding is the people weren't even really that upset about it. Somebody just made it a thing. And like, and then when you apologize, even if what you did really wasn't that bad, it's just some group of people who aren't even your fans. When you apologize, it's like giving them more fuel for their fire. It's like acknowledging that what they say is true.
Yeah, that's one of the dangers, especially if you don't know how to apologize. If
Mm.
you make a good apology, like a good rhetorically designed apology, then it puts out fires. It doesn't start new fires.
What if I want to apologize without apologizing?
Good luck. You'll never be forgiven when you do that. Think
What if I
about
don't
your
care?
relationship, okay? Think about Ben. Like Benjamin does something
Oh, well,
and
if
he gives
it's
you a
Ben,
half-hearted
that's one
apology. How are you
thing.
going to feel about that?
Well, that's because I actually care about Benjamin and our relationship. If it's somebody that I actually care about, but if it's just some online haters and people who are like, I disagree with you, and you told a joke one time that I was offended by, and now I want to ruin your life and make it so you can't feed your family.
Yeah, well, again, this is part of the problem. Like I don't really respond to anyone on social media. Like I don't I usually don't have comments on my social media.
Really?
I don't because human beings were not our language, our communication, our psyches were not built to multi-log with thousands of people at the same time. It's hard enough to do dialogue.
Bruh, it's hard enough to be in a relationship with one person,
Yeah, I don't
right?
need to be in a relationship with 50,000 people.
I mean, for real. Like I love Benjamin, but marriages are like any relationship is a challenge. You're going to get on each other's nerves. You're going to disagree about things. How this was interesting. I experienced this during my congressional campaign where I did a video. I've talked about this on air before, I think. I did a video where I went to Del Rio to do a mini documentary on the border crisis.
The
And
restaurant Del Rio? Let's talk Del Rio.
no, the town Del Rio.
Okay.
And
Border crisis. You're going down there, checking out the border.
long story short, it was so dumb. There's like no border wall. It's a fence. There's holes in it. It's basically pointless and a waste of money. At least where we were. That was the gist of the story. Like if we care about the border, like this is not the way to do it. And I had people tell me they were no longer going to support me because I said something bad about Trump's wall. That I didn't support Trump's wall. And I was like, so you would rather me lie or be dishonest about what I found than tell you the truth so that we can look for a solution that actually works?
See, you're a truth-oriented arguer and rhetorician. You want some truth.
Right? See, so that's what I was wondering when you were talking about truth earlier. Like, is that the kind of thing?
Truth, again, is very tricky. It changes in every situation. The concept of truth. Like the fact you just told me you went down to Del Rio, right?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, yeah.
How do I know that?
I have video footage of it.
Maybe you faked it all like the moon landing.
I could have.
Maybe you just went to San Antonio. How do I know?
Well, that's true. Because there's no big river in San Antonio. Oh, no, wait, there is a river in San Antonio. Never mind. Never mind.
So if you allow people to come in and start attacking, our concepts like truth, they break down really quickly. Like you can tear truth apart like that. Like this is the whole problem with. So my book that I wrote during the frozen pandemic in Austin.
You have a book?
I do. It's called 21 Coliseums of Persuasion. And basically it does this. So Aristotle's original definition of rhetoric was it's the ability to see the entire menu of persuasion, all the alternatives, and choose the right one for the right situation. Nobody ever knows the full menu. Everybody gets trained on a couple of things and they just use it over and over again, whether it works or not. If you're going to be an effective persuader, you need to see the full menu. And according to who you're talking to, pick the one area that's going to work better than the others. Most everybody picks logos or logic and tries to do argument and truth finding and things like that. And it's a horrible technology. It breaks almost as badly as language does.
Yep.
Because you can't prove that you were there.
Well, and when a lot of times when you're talking to people, they are not in their logic brain. They are not in their reason brain.
No, they're in their
at least you can't start there. Right.
They're in emotion.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's like any marriage counselor will tell you. Like if you're having a marital spat or whatever, using facts and logic to argue with your spouse normally does not work. You have to first be like acknowledge their feelings or whatever.
Right. Well, and that's why, like, so on my podcast, I sometimes say I do converting conservatives. And I've had you on there a couple of times. The word converting, I use it because it's such a strong verb and it's a trigger verb for people. It's like, what's that mean? You can't convert me. And I'm like, I can convert anybody on anything because that's what human beings are. We are reprogrammable. We have plastic brains. They're neurologically emergent. You don't believe the same thing you believe when you were 5 years old right now.
I used to be a liberal.
Right. So you can change. Every human being can change. No matter how locked in they are, they can change. And so they can be converted. And what you want is not to use unethical techniques like trickery.
Right.
You want to use ethical techniques to help people change if you want them to get to something different than where they are.
And that's what, so hold on. I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to share. This is your book. Ooh.
That's my book.
Okay, double check. Yes. Okay. So does your book help teach people like how to be ethical persuaders?
Yes, that's one of the things that the book does. So ethical, unethical is one of the chapters in the book. And the book is really, it's kind of like a user's manual more than a book. Like I just show everyone the areas and talk about them, but the book would have been 1,500 pages long if I'd actually gone into depth on these 21 massive areas. Like learning logic and logos and argument is an incredibly challenging area. I've been studying it for 40 years and it's just constantly breaking.
That's wild.
So,
okay, y'all. I put the link to the book in the chat.
But yeah, the book is trying to get people oriented to, hey, take control of your persuasion. Like I even said when I came on here, I'm like, you need the chance to persuade me, to convert me, because I had you on my podcast. So you can have me on and convert me to whatever you want to convert me to.
I don't
care
know
what it is.
how.
Well, that's what the book does. It shows you how to do it.
Dan, come on to the dark side.
The dark side.
Come to the dark side.
Well, like, who are you going to vote for this presidential election? I'm curious.
Ugh. In the primary or?
I guess for the Republican side.
Well, I would have.
People soured on Trump, right? Some people.
Yeah. I am. I would have voted for Vivek Ramaswamy if he hadn't dropped out. He is the most libertarian-leaning candidate in the field. I don't even think the libertarians have a candidate this year. So he's the most libertarian-leaning candidate, but he's also still pretty pro-life and also for closing the borders and getting control of our border. So, and that's kind of, I'm considered like a Mises Caucus libertarian.
A what?
Yeah. What's that?
Mises Caucus, what?
Mises, there's caucuses. So the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party is basically libertarians who have Judeo-Christian moral values, basically. Okay.
Christians.
Pretty much, they're Christian libertarians. And then not everybody, but, Christian or Jewish usually, like, people who are pro-life or just pro not up until the point of birth. Maybe the unborn should still have personhood status,
we've got a lot of life. Like, you guys have won. There's 8 billion of us. Like, the pro-lifers won.
Yeah, but we're still like having a freaking population collapse.
No, we're not. Like, we could import talk about open the border. Just open the border for 2 weeks and say, hey, bring a bunch more people in, and America refills. Like, that's the cool
Oh,
thing about
well,
America is
see,
that
now
it's it's an immigrant country.
now that's here. I don't have any problem with immigrants. I don't care if well, I mean, assuming that we have jobs for everybody and opportunity, that's one thing.
And
What
well,
I
AI
care
is going to
about
take all
is if,
that. You know, AI is going to take all those jobs, so that's going to have to change.
oh, yeah, don't even get me. Well, all the more reason to not have a bunch of poor people flooding our borders. Like,
My
if
point, I
all
think
those
you guys
jobs,
won. I think pro-life won. 8 billion humans, you guys won.
I
Congratulations.
don't know. I don't know.
I don't know why you're so upset. Like, we need, like, there's plenty of people.
Okay. Well, yeah, but they're also not Americans. And here's what I mean by that specifically. I want to preserve the culture of America. I want and not to say that everything is fine all the time and that it's perfect here and that people aren't a bunch of buttholes, because I have experienced some buttholes.
You have experienced a bit of the, yeah, the iffy people of the world.
The buttholery. So, but I want there to be a meritocracy. I want freedom of speech. I want the right to defend myself. I want, if people, I don't care if people want to come here as long as you also are willing to preserve our culture.
So you don't care if they come here as long as they act a certain way.
If you act like Americans, I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what country you come from. Why would I care? Like, nobody.
Yeah, right. There's our, going back to our language problem. American is as problematic as truth. Like, defining what is an American, again, drop it at different eras, drop it at different regions, drop it at different places. Like, ask the Irish who immigrated here in the 1800s, who got in the tenement buildings in New York, if that felt like being an American. Americans,
I mean,
there's a huge range of what that means.
It is. And that's what, I mean,
But I get what you're saying. Like, those are good qualities in people. Freedom of speech, right to defend yourself, do what you want to be. All those things are, those are some of the shining elements of an American.
Yeah. I would like to see personally what I would like. People are like, oh, the good old days of the 50s and 60s. I'm like, there's no era that you can go back to where things were like perfect and everybody was great and happy, right? There's a reason that there has been a rejection of Christianity in the United States. And a large part of it is because, frankly, honestly, like the Catholic Church and Christians who talk about buttholery, right? Dan, okay, let me ask you this. Would you consider yourself an atheist or would you say you're agnostic?
I consider myself a kid who grew up in a strongly Catholic community. Parents were deeply involved in the church, the Catholic Church, but it was really just a way to hang out. Like, the church itself didn't matter that much. Like, the religion didn't matter. It was more just community. And then I went to, okay, check this out. I went to Catholic kindergarten, St. Thomas More. I went to Catholic elementary and grade school or middle school, Our Lady of Mount Carmel. I went to an all-male Catholic high school, St. Francis de Sales, and then 4 years at a Catholic college.
Good God.
And I'm not Christian anymore. Like, I'm like, Jesus had a shot and he blew it. Like, I did not get it. I was not comfortable with the programming, with the suggestions that they were making.
So, because the reason I asked the question is because most of the atheists I know are people who grew up Catholic. They had some experience in their life where they were, harmed, hurt. We call it church hurt. Their parents were jerks or whatever. Church hurt. And so talk about not persuading people well. The church has not done a good job, in my opinion, of persuading people why our way is better. And so to me, a lot of the rejection of the church that we're seeing is this pendulum swing, right? So it's like people were like, you just got done saying it. Americans don't like being told what to do. Right. And
Absolutely
so
true.
So then you grow up and you got people trying to be like, you got to do this and you have to do this. And if you, especially if you haven't had your own personal encounter with a living God, like then you're just being told stuff from somebody else's experience or someone who's absolutely full of crap and isn't even really a Christian.
Yeah, religion's a very interesting area of persuasion because what you're talking about, again, in classical persuasion, I try not to be too teachery, too professory, but it
Yeah.
fascinates me,
I
like when you
know. I
actually look at
love
this,
it. I love it.
because it's like this stuff has been studied for a long time. And if people knew it better, they'd be able to protect themselves better from persuasion. They'd be able to persuade other people who are going off whatever rails that you don't want them to go off on in your life. They'd have some more options. And one of the taglines I use is complicated times require sophisticated techniques. You have to learn some stuff to be able to come back into this situation to help somebody.
Right.
And so religion is a super fascinating area. I was talking about this the other day, that it's hard to beat a entity that can offer magic rewards. Like you can't offer that anywhere else. Eternal life, all the rewards of heaven, and then all the punishments of hell. Nobody else gets to offer that. That's pretty strong persuasion. But it only becomes real, and this is kind of what you're talking about, for Americans, I think especially, is if it turns over into praxis, which is persuasion by behavior, persuasion by experience. It's not words. It's you
Okay.
physically experience something, you emotionally, cognitively experience something, and
Yeah.
that ends up changing you. And that's a super
Okay.
powerful form of persuasion. You hear a lot of people who've gone through religious experiences, supernatural experiences, or whatever they are. That's what they talk about as their anchor. And it's a form of experience, I didn't hear this from anybody. I felt it. And that's a really strong form of persuasion.
But you can't like, no, that was a dumb thing I was just about to say something really dumb, Dan.
What?
I was get
No,
I
no.
know,
I
you
say dumb things
know,
all the time. It doesn't stop me. Just jump in there.
no, really though, I was thinking, yeah, but you can't fake that. And then I was like, I don't know if that's true.
You can fake
So,
that. That's the
so
scary
this
part.
this is like the ethical versus unethical persuasion, right? Because so here's, you know, for me, like the day, my sobriety date, right? I I hit bottom. I surrendered to a power greater than myself, and I had a physiological experience. I like I physically, what you just described, I had a physiological experience of knowing God. And I had never experienced anything like that before. And it was just this moment. I was by myself. There was nobody around. There's no music playing, right? It was just this moment of surrender. But we see all the time, you know, the like Joel Olstein's of the world. Everybody gives him tons of crap. But not just him, you know, like cult leaders and stuff like that. Like they can create that emotionality in people. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because like you get this, again, people throw these terms around without, I think, a lot of times really understanding what they mean. But brainwashing is a set of techniques to get people into a physiological, emotional state that creates neurological changes. That's what it is. And it's been studied for a long time. So like if you go into the mega churches, they play really loud music. All right. Music gets into the brain in a different way. It gets you into a different sensory state. Everybody's around them in a huge groups of people creates, this is the Nazis, like the Nuremberg rallies. They have millions, just all these people. Everybody's
The
dressed alike.
energy. Oh yeah, whenever you're in a large group of people, there is like a collective vibration, if you
Yes, and
will.
your identity goes from personal identity, because everybody's dressed like you, all do the same things, to group
Mm,
identity. And you now
okay.
become a part of the group. And essentially, that's it's not like you can just replicate it just like that. And it's not like it's the same experience that you had, but you
Right.
can use all these techniques unethically with production value to get people, and you do it over and over and over again, and it has the type of effect of deep persuasion, deep neurological retraining. Not for everybody. Some people will reject it, but but it's a very strong system. And so, yeah, people totally, replicate those experiences as best they can as persuaders.
So what do you see when you're consuming media of any kind, whether you're watching the news or a TV show or a comedian on stage? Does your brain just like, do you just see it? Is it like, do you see like little like
Like the
mathematical
Terminator, like the
calculations going
Matrix.
before? Is that what happens in your head when you're listening to people talk? Or do you just do you turn it off? How do you,
I think what
what's
you
that
get, yeah, when you
like?
get when you get rhetorician training, rhetorical training, you can turn that on in your brain, and it's
Mm.
literally, this is why I wrote the book. I'm not even trying to sell the book. I could care less. I make the book free,
No,
but
sell the book. I love it.
my book will instantly pop up into my head, and I'll look and see what technique you're using, what chapter it fits in, all the things going on in there, and I'll know how to counter program what you're doing if I want to.
Ooh, okay, everybody go buy this book. I'm going to buy this book. Dan, I didn't know you were an author.
I am an
I'm
author.
so
Author.
excited. Did
Author.
you do, dude, you got to do a Kindle version
Yeah, I know. I need to do all that stuff. I got a
or
bunch of
not Kindle, an
audio
audiobook.
version. Yeah, I know. That's
You'd be
next.
great at it. Oh
Um,
my gosh. Okay,
but
so
yeah,
you,
rhetoric ears, rhetoric brain, rhetoric vision is like, hey, what persuasion is going on? Do I like where it's going? If I don't, how do I counter program it?
so then how did you bring your rhetorical training into the because I noticed we're going around the hour here and I wanted to make sure I asked you about doing comedy on a cruise ship. So did they ask you to persuade people on the cruise ship to do stuff in your comedy? Or was it just straight comedy?
Straight comedy, but comedy, stand up is a persuasion. Like,
Mm.
you have to give them things that they're going to find funny, and you have to understand them well enough to know what that is. And the cruise ships will restrict you on things you can talk about. They don't want you to talk about religion. They don't want to hear about politics. They don't
Mm.
really want to hear about sex. A lot of the cruise ships try to avoid triggering audience members by vanillaizing the comedy.
I mean, like, I, they just don't want you to be lewd or like,
Well, again, the criteria for that changes, but over here is like hardcore comedy, right? Like, you'll
okay.
say anything. Like, those
Yeah.
comedians,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Like,
Chappelles of the world and
oh,
stuff like that,
yeah.
and much worse than Chappelle.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you've
Andrew
got the
Dice Clay.
right, and people you've never heard of, Doug Stanhope, guys that are just amazing at it, just hardcore deviants. And
Okay.
then you have like the completely clean over here, who are puppets and poodles, and you know Brian Regan is a great clean comedian. I've never heard him cuss on
Yep.
stage at all, and
Yep.
still super funny. And then
Yep.
everybody else is kind of in the middle, and they try to shade you over to clean because it's less chancy, it's less risky. Like, I'll give you an example. I have a bit in my show about we're the only thing on the planet that tries to be monogamous for real, human
Yeah.
beings. Like, nothing else does it. And people always want to argue, and they're like, what about penguins? I'm like, I don't believe penguins are monogamous. They all look alike. That's perfect opportunity for a male penguin. It's like, I thought she was you. Look at her. You guys should wear a scarf, something.
Yeah, that is so bad.
So it's a silly little bit about
yeah. Did they tell you to cut that?
Complain about that bit. She yelled during the show. I yelled during the show, but I don't want to hear this. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what to say to you.
Oh my God. That's got to be the worst. How? Okay, so going back to comedy then, the thing I said was, how have you seen things change over the years? And you said you feel like there's just more critics and more people that can like basically get you booted or fired or whatever.
And who feel empowered to say it, who feel empowered to take part in the public dialogue. They'll jump up and say stuff.
What would be, this is a crazy question. Is there anything in particular about our culture that you think really feeds into that? Nothing is, you can't be funny anymore. None of that is allowed. We got to cancel people. We got to get rid of you. Like, can you guess what happened in our culture or why our culture is like that?
Like I said, I don't think it's changed. I think the political, the power environment has changed.
Right.
Like it used to be, say you wanted to make fun of the bald, okay? And in my show, I have a little bit about this too. I'm like, being bald is the last physical defect you can still just openly laugh about. Like, it's funny. Like, oh, look at that. I lost a body part here.
I don't know. I don't know if you can laugh about that anymore. Hence,
and I saw a news story the other day about somebody who was upset because somebody said something about being bald at a business, and they were, sort of getting, traction because of that. So it's an endless down cycling of physical appearance. Okay. So what we're finding is maybe people were always upset when you did physical appearance jokes, but they had no venue and no way to get the complaint out. Now they do. And so it's changed the nature of doing that kind of material.
Yeah, but like, what can you really say that isn't going to offend anybody?
Nothing. Like, comedy is supposed to be edgy. It's supposed to talk about things. If it offends people, it offends people. The question is, how do you react to being offended?
And that's what I think, like, there's so few things that to me are off limits that I don't think you can make a funny joke out of. I personally don't. Like, I don't think you can make a rape joke and have it be funny. I'm not supposed to say that on YouTube either because I'll get, my video de-boosted or whatever it is.
They just grab words.
Yeah, so like I don't think jokes about that are ever I don't think you can tell a funny joke about that. Now I say that having heard jokes about it that I laughed at.
Come sit in a writer's room sometime in Hollywood on a talk show, and you will understand that everything in human experience can be made incredibly funny. Everything. Now, would you want to be doing those jokes around the person who is, experiencing a horrible thing? No. But comedy has no morality. Can you make it funny? Now, when you take it outside of the comedy space and you start judging it in serious world, yeah, those are horrible statements.
Oh, wow. Isn't that interesting? Okay, say that again. You say comedy doesn't have morality?
Comedy does not have a morality.
Well, because if it did, then how do you can't make fun of things?
Well, what's happening, what you're talking about is morality is starting to seep into the comedy frame and the comedy sphere.
Oh, that's so true. And then it's not even like, and morality is another one of those words. How do you define morality? Well, it depends on the person who's getting offended. and having their little feelings about stuff.
I had somebody call. I like to talk to the audience when I do stand up, and I had somebody sitting near the stage once, and I asked, there's 4 women, and I was like, "You guys out celebrating something?" And the woman said, "It's my birthday." And I said, "Did you say birthday?" She's like, "No." And I said to the audience, I said, "Did she say birthday?" And they're like, "Yeah, she said birthday." She called the club the next day and complained that I'd made fun of her in front of all these people, which I had, but it was very lightly done. And I was not attacking her. It was silly. It meant nothing, but it hurt her feelings.
Was she, dude, if you sit in the front, expect to be heckled.
I wasn't even heckling her. I was just talking to her, and she said something funny.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't go to a comedy club, sit up front where I know you can see me, and then not expect that I'm going to end up getting made fun of at some point.
I agree. Those are the agreements. You're in a comedy club. This is not supposed to be serious. I don't care that you said birthday. Like, I'm sure, and she was a teacher. She got really upset because she was a teacher. I'm like, okay, birthday woman.
So somebody just made fun of your accent and you got mad?
Well, you can get offended at anything. That can't be the criteria. Like, you're being offended cannot be the criteria for what I say.
Or what's funny.
But I also can't control the fact if you are offended, I can't control that. That's your right. But now, do we want to restrict stand-up comedians to only these types of talk? That's why comedy can't have any morality at all.
And that's the thing, and you can't be apologized. Then you'd be apologizing every other day to everybody.
You know, asking about the cruise ships, one of the challenges on the cruise ships is that it's often a very international audience. I did one ship, and I was off the coast of Brazil. It was a wonderful cruise. I had so much fun. I loved it. But the audience was 80% British.
Oh.
And I did not realize how American my show is. And they didn't get a lot of the jokes. They didn't like me. It was horrible.
Well, that's because if you're saying things that are like cultural references or slang or whatever, different
all of it
words.
Your facial expressions are different in different cultures, so they weren't getting cued to where the jokes were. Your vocal intonations are different, so they didn't. When I hit a punchline with a vocal whatever, it didn't work for them. Like, it just died. It was horrible, and so I finally stopped. I was like, "This is your fault. I've done this show many, many times. Like, it's you British and your culture." And they didn't like that either. Like, I was just being silly, but they would not give it anything. But, you know,
they did
that
not
was
care.
A mismatch between how I did comedy and what they were bringing to it.
Is that why people that watch like Monty Python and the Holy Grail and stuff like that, like there's certain British comedy I watch and I'm just like, I don't get it.
I don't like most international stand-up. Like,
really?
Like,
Dan French is a snob. Okay, tell me
I just don't get it. It doesn't translate. I'm watching it going, it seems like they're just telling mediocre jokes and then mugging a lot. Like French stand-ups. There's a French guy who moved here to the U.S. and he had a Netflix special, and you could tell he even talked about it. And he goes like, "In France, people love me. Here, they don't think I'm funny." I'm like, "Yeah, I see it."
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we can tell.
He may be a great comic in his country, but it's really hard for comedy to go across cultures.
Oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Okay, so I want you to tell me. Okay, so before we get off today, on a scale of 1 to 10, generally speaking, okay, this is your. Are you familiar with all the current like front runner Republican candidates? Have you been following any of this?
Yeah, I follow politics.
Okay, so this is what we wanted. We thought this would be funny.
Okay, here we go.
So yes, so this is what. So okay, we want you to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how well the presidential candidates are doing with their rhetoric and with their persuasion. Now, let's don't think about their poll numbers, okay? I want you to just like generally speaking of these people, I want you to rate them and give us like a sentence on what you think about how they're doing.
Okay, so you're talking about the Republicans, right?
Yes.
Because there's nobody on the left. Oh, there's RFK, right, and sort of the middle. He's kind
Yes.
of bouncing in
And
there.
suppose I keep hearing rumors that Joe Manchin is running because he was at an event in New Hampshire. I was like, bruh, are you guys just getting ready in case Biden kicks the bucket? You know, like Newsom with his stupid debate with DeSantis and
Yeah, Newsom's interesting actually. Being out in California, I've seen a lot of Newsom, so he's an interesting candidate.
Okay, so maybe we'll hit the Dems and independents too. So let's start with you know what, we're gonna skip Donald Trump.
Okay,
No,
he's been talked about a lot.
I'm like,
he's
not
Trump,
bothering
right?
to show up debates. Yeah,
you're not a Trump fan.
You know, if he's the candidate and it's him against Joe Biden, I'm definitely going to vote for Trump over Joe Biden.
Do you remember when I offered you a corn dog if you would vote for Joe Biden?
I do, and I did not take the corn dog, although I love corn dogs.
Corn dog, slushy, and Twizzlers, all from 7-Eleven.
Now, okay, if you make it a corn dog, a slushy, and some Sour Patch Kids,
yeah,
we might have a deal.
All right. Well, just remember that's back. That's over here in the. It's in the, you know, it's in the prize. It's in the prize closet.
Okay, so let's start with. The other front runner in the Republican Party, Ron DeSantis. So, would you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate his rhetoric and his campaign?
He has had a tough primary. Like, it's been tough. I think taking him out of his element and putting him on a national stage where he's not in control of everything has been hard on him. He's not good, you know, in the moment. He looks stiff. He doesn't seem comfortable. He's been made to look silly a few times. I think he's had a hard primary. Now, he may learn from that. He seems to be a learning politician. He's done very well in Florida. He may learn from that and sort of, you know, up his game. But I'm not sure. Like, a lot of that is stunt politics, like putting immigrants, you know, illegal immigrants onto buses and sending them elsewhere, banning books. All that kind of stuff is spectacle stunt politics, you know, to try to give some type of visuality to his conservatism.
Yeah. Well, just for he didn't ban any books. They just said we don't want pornographic books in elementary schools. The books are not banned.
There's that word problems again. What is banning?
We're not banned.
What is banning?
But I do hear what you're saying. So on a scale of 1 to 10,
I give him a 2. He has not had a good primary. He's not out of the game. He may come back in 2028, but he may learn. We'll see.
Yeah, it's been disappointing. I've been disappointed with that campaign as well. Okay, so then, Nikki Haley.
She stepped in the biggest pile of dog crap unnecessarily that I've ever seen in a political candidate.
Okay, wait, which thing? Which pile of dog crap?
You're getting drugged down in 2024 over the word slavery. Like, you're losing the Civil War again. Like, that is the oddest loss. Like, that's 160-year-old hit. Like, it's one more musket fire just taking her out. Yeah, that was weird. That was clumsy.
Well, she's said some other things that people were just like.
She hit some sour notes.
Yeah. And if she's my least favorite, I'd vote for Chris Christie over Nikki Haley. And that's the truth. I think Nikki Haley is an establishment politician. Like, I see her as part of the war machine. You know, she's like, let's bomb everybody to hell. And I'm like, bruh, dude, you are way too excited. about sending our troops off to
I
war,
thought you liked
especially
America. I thought you liked traditional America. This is nothing if not a war positive country. We are a very
no,
war positive country.
no. Hey, I'm about it if it's, speaking of morality, if it's a moral war like World War II or something like that, okay,
Oh,
fine.
you're gonna find moral wars, are you?
Well, and so that's the other thing. And then if you talk to people back then about the other things that were going on and stuff, and you're just like, man, what the heck?
It gets
And
again
I mean,
very complicated. Like, how moral is it to allow Russia to take over another country?
well, how moral is it that we disarmed the country that they took over, the most corrupt country in all of Europe?
See,
Now billions of
wonderfully,
American dollars are just
yeah,
missing.
wonderful claims just flying around everywhere, and we have no idea whether any of it's true or false, or we don't know, right? We have no idea whether any of this is true. So let's get
That's
back to
true.
the Nikki Haley.
Nikki
So
Haley
Nikki
sucks.
Haley,
Oh,
I
I'm
don't see
sorry. I'm
the.
not supposed to color your opinion.
No, it's okay. You can talk whatever. It'll either color it or it won't. I don't see the charm. I don't see the charm of Nikki Haley. I don't see what she's bringing to the moment. Like, she just seems kind of, like she needs to eat a sandwich and learn how to not say sour things in public.
She looks angry. She has
Yeah,
an angry look on her face.
and that's hard. I think for female candidates, they can come across as very strident and too tight very
Mm,
easily, because when they try to do forcefulness, it kind of can move over into sort of that feminine aggressiveness that a lot of people don't like. So it's a tough one on female
yeah.
candidates.
Yeah.
So I won't
Well,
hold her to
and
task too much for that, but she is just a you know tripwire of weird things to say.
well, and that's even like some of her, oh, I'm going to step on him with heels. And I'm like, I thought we didn't like identity politics. I thought our team didn't like identity politics. I thought your genitalia and your skin color and, your religion didn't qualify you or disqualify you from things. I thought that was an agreement that we had on our team.
That is so
And
interesting. What you just said is so interesting rhetorically,
yeah.
because it's civil rights rhetoric from the
Mm.
60s that the right has resurrected and is now inhabiting.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, there's a technique in rhetoric of basically it's co-optation or adaptation, where you take the other side's successful rhetoric
Yeah.
and you change the content but use the same tactic and strategy. And
Mm.
that idea of the right and conservatives being non-right, we don't see race, that's not important to us, or gender or things like that, we want everybody to be included. That is civil rights politics, civil rights
Well,
rhetoric.
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But that's
That's
never been
what
associated with the conservative movement before.
Oh, I would have to disagree with you on that. Now, if you want to say
I'm just talking
that
about
that
like just the rhetorically, that's never been a strategy that the right has used.
maybe maybe not like I don't know if that's correct. I mean, Republicans were the ones who were voting for and pushing civil rights legislation. It was Democrats who were voting against it. And that's
Well,
like,
let's not to
okay,
side
we're
rail. I want to get to
digressing.
your
We're
thing,
digressing. No,
but
we're
it's a great
digressing.
conversation. That's a great,
Okay.
like, to me, that's a wonderful rhetorical conversation, because
Okay.
it's one of those things that happens in big national rhetoric right now,
Yeah.
where people are
Yeah.
just jumping around to adopting new rhetorics that they've never had before. Like even the Democrats, everybody's doing it. So go ahead.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
So I'm
So
giving
Nikki
her
Haley, we would get on a scale of 1 to 10.
1.9.
Ooh. Ooh, even worse than Ron DeSantis.
I
Okay.
think because DeSantis hasn't disqualified himself. She's disqualified herself.
I think so too. I mean, anybody that's conservative, like legitimately conservative, does not want Nikki Haley. They don't want, when you've got the support of the Koch brothers and the Bushes and all of the machine, nobody wants you.
Whatever conservative means.
Correct. Which is like libertarians, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Who else?
then
Vivek.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
My favorite description of him has been debate bro. He's a debate bro, which I
I'm
think
so into this. Yes.
nails him perfectly.
I love
Very,
that.
very verbally gifted, very good on stage, flows out things really well. But he's trying to hit push buttons with his
Yeah.
rhetoric, and I have no idea what he really believes, but he's just trying to say things glibly and very, very smoothly, and he's trying to go, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Does this get any reaction? And suddenly he's like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of FBI agents in the January 6th crowd. And people are like, what? But he said 500 things to get that one thing, that one response.
Okay. So
I would call him the
then
AI candidate. He sounds like AI conservative.
I don't even know if I can disagree with you. I Benjamin and I were literally just talking about when you're in interviews and you're doing things, be careful not to co-sign people when they say things that you might not necessarily agree with or whatever. And I'm like, I can't
Hard
even
though.
disagree.
People have good
I
points.
like Vivek, but you're not wrong. Okay, so then what would you give him for a rating?
Well, he went from zero, nobody knowing him at all, to a lot of people knowing him. So he's got to be probably a 4 or 5 because he's
Oh
now
my
national.
gosh.
Same thing Pete Buttigieg did, in the last election. Nobody ever heard this guy, and now suddenly he's a national figure, and so that's a big win rhetorically. Like
Okay.
if Vivek can again mature and figure out what he actually believes and come back with something better, people will listen to him again, I think.
Okay, so then what do you think about RFK Jr.?
I think steroids are a scary thing. I think taking too much human growth hormone and doing politics is a weird combination. Like, it's just weird to me.
Human growth hormone? What is
Yeah, he's on
is that a
all the
rumor or something?
He's on insulin, bodybuilder, all the bodybuilder stuff that you take.
Oh, for
to
real?
keep up with that. Yeah, look how he's old and suddenly he's beefed.
I
That
don't
doesn't
know.
happen.
I know people who are
he's
old
like,
and beefy.
It's like he's the Barry Bonds of politics.
You can be in shape and be old.
No, you don't get bigger with age without drugs. Sorry.
Okay, well, I'm not sure about that. I don't. This is the first I'm hearing this.
Anyway, that's weird to me. I haven't followed him closely. I know a lot of the kind of libertarian people. I had some friends out here who did an event that they let him come and speak at their house with a bunch of other rich people. I don't see it. Like, I don't find the things that he's saying to be particularly disciplined. I know he's like, he gets called out on stuff, and then he gets up there and says, I didn't really say that. And it's like, well, you did.
Yeah, that's happened a couple of times that I'm like,
I'll give Trump this. Trump doesn't back down. Like, he says something, everybody gets upset. He's like, yeah, that's what I said.
That's what I said. Okay, so then,
again.
okay, so everybody's failing. Okay, so far, everyone we've talked about has gotten a failing grade. So now, obviously, you're not a Trumpster, but now that you've said it, what would you give him for his rhetoric? How would you rate him?
Trump's always the same thing. Like, he's his own creature. There will never be another Trump because he came from a background that nobody else will ever have again. Big time, famous in New York as a promoter, essentially. Got into the media by being a New York real estate mogul promoter, talking about himself all the time. So he's already famous for that. Then he got into reality show fame and got super famous from that. And so he already had those two things going. And he was a clown. Like, before he got into politics, his major character was funny. Like, everybody considered him a joke. That's why he was in Home Alone 2 or whatever. Because he had that character. And that's how we knew him nationally. And then he jumped. I sometimes call it like he's a clown who jumped in and drove away in the Porsche. Like America is this massive trillion-dollar entity, Porsche, and Bush and all these guys who are supposed to, you know, what's his name, Marco and Cruz and all these guys are supposed to be the driver. And Trump showed up and like, dun, 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 and he jumped in and drove away. You're like, wow, how did the clown do that? And the clown is super trained as a script sayer. He knows how to create conflict. He knows how to get the media to pay attention to him. He's got skills and training that nobody else has ever had or ever will have.
I mean, that's just from doing media, being in the media for so long.
For 40, 50 years. I mean, the guy's, he knows when the camera's on how to make the camera look at him.
He's in rap songs. He was a cultural icon. And so, I mean, I almost wonder if like Michael Jordan could run for president and could win. Do you know what I mean? Like people who are so beloved by the country, like they feel a connection to them.
Everybody will, Tom Hanks and Oprah and, you know, all these different people, The Rock. And a lot of these guys, it just depends whether they can sell their soul to the political process. And that's why I said Trump is unique, because he was so narcissistic that he sold his soul to it. He's like, yeah, I'm going to leave all this other stuff behind. And I'm going to be, he could see it. Once he got elected president, he's like, oh my God, I got to be a politician all the time. I can't be business guy.
Yeah.
You know, and so most of those people, they're giving up a much better life to get into politics. That's a tough sell. You know, but Trump was like, everybody will know me. I'm like, yeah, everybody knows villains. Like he's an anti-hero. Yeah. So for half the world, they hate his guts.
That's so, oh my God, that is such a good description, Dan. That is such a good description, because he is a giant middle finger to the culture war for people who are on the right. And they feel like he is their, what's that word? You know, avatar. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're going into the world saying and doing the things that I want to be able to say and do. You are striking back at the people who are insulting me.
Right.
And I think that's where so much of his appeal comes from. And I get it. Like I felt that way and I feel that way. I don't appreciate being called a deplorable and, you know, a bitter clinger. And when you have these establishment politicians just insulting you to your face, and then somebody else comes along and says, how about screw them together? And everybody's like, okay.
Yeah, it's a strong base for sure. Like aggrievement politics of, hey, these people have gone after you, put me in charge and I will go after them. You know, and I sometimes describe, like, everybody wonders about the abortion issue. It's like, you know, with evangelicals and stuff, they would vote for a donut if they knew the donut was going to vote for or going to put the policies in place that they want. Mm-hmm. They don't care that it's Trump. They want somebody to champion the policies that they want in the world, whether they're right or wrong. They don't care. They want, these are the things that they have signed off on. I want Christianity to be supported. I want, you know, choice in the world. I want no abortion. These are the things I want. And if it was a donut up there that had been programmed to say these things, it could beat Trump if it was a very entertaining donut.
Yep. Well, and that's the same. Like people are not excited about voting for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is not.
He's a different ballgame. Like we don't have time to go into Biden.
I know we could go into a whole other thing, but that's what it's like. It's people will, it doesn't matter on either side. People think Trump is Hitler and therefore they'll vote for Joe Biden. So last but not least, what score would you give the American people on how they are fighting the propaganda and the rhetoric?
We're struggling. This is hard for America. America's never had to deal with this before. We watched Germany deal with it, you know, back in the 30s when Hitler was coming up and started to use all these propaganda techniques. We've watched other countries have to deal with this, about different propaganda techniques. America never had to deal with it. And we are not a political people. We don't really like politics. We've been forced into politics, like you said very early in this podcast, where everything's political now. You know, when I was growing up, the president would come on and do this State of the Union, and everybody would bitch because there's nothing else on TV, and they still wouldn't watch it. So politics was kept way off to the side because America was running fine for most people, and they're like, "Hey, America's fine. I don't need to worry about who's." They didn't even know most of the politicians. And now it's been brought up. It's been put in people's faces. Propaganda techniques have exploded with social media and cable media, and we're struggling. We don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I think that everyone watching today needs to go get your book, The 21 Colosseums of Persuasion. Right? I said that right, didn't I?
Yeah, and my podcast, I interview I interview persuasion people, politicians, other academics. There's 150 hours of free rhetoric training on there too. So
is that your Dr. Dan website?
It's all on the Dr. Dan website, or you can go to Rhetoric Warriors is the title of the podcast right now. But just go to Dr. Dan's World, and that's where you'll find all this stuff.
Dr. Dan's World.
Dr. Dan's World.
Dun, 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 dun.
The Comedian Americans Party.
Dude, canoodle.
I like that verb.
That is a good word. Right. I like it. Wait, what did it say? Where rhetoric and comedy canoodle? Yeah. Where comedy and rhetoric canoodle. I love that. Okay, so Dr. Dan's World. Okay, so hold on. I'm gonna put that link in the chat as well. Thank you, Dr. Dan French, for joining me today. I was gonna try to keep it to an hour, but you are always so fascinating to talk to.
There's so much stuff to talk about.
Oh right? My gosh, you're such a smart guy.
Well, thanks.
You're such a smart guy. Yes, you're awesome. Thank you, Dan, for being with us this week. You guys go out, check him out. And while you do that, make sure you leave a like on this video, share this video, tell everyone you know to buy Dan's book, to buy our book, Reasons to Trust the Government.
Is that sarcasm? Is that sarcasm? Is that irony?
It is. It is, Dan. That is correct. Because the truth is there are no reasons to trust the government. Ladies and gentlemen, that you can be for sure. So come back and see us again. Again, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And say everybody say bye to Dan.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Dan.
Don't talk to me, but bye.